Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. This is episode 126, written by Ron Sproat, directed by Leila Swift. This episode starts off in the old house. You have Matthew telling Victoria that the ghost want him to kill her, that the ghost want another, basically a body, and she's going to be the one that they get. Um, Matthew again makes sure that she's tied tight on the chair this time, that she can't get out, and then he goes to out of the old house, out of the bookshelf, out of the old house, and goes to the tool shed. And yeah, he won't be the last one there, um, which is really interesting. So Victoria Winters is, please somebody help me, please somebody help me, as the credits get ready to roll at the beginning, and we go to the great house, and Burke and Roger do this nice little switcheroo because it starts off with Burke and David Collins by the stairs. Burke Devlin, Mitchell Ryan's character. For those wondering, Mitchell Ryan for the longest time played Burke Devlin. In fact, he has been playing Burke Devlin since the beginning episode of this, episode one, folks. If you've never seen Dark Shadows, know that Mitchell Ryan was a Dark Shadows alum. So is Lewis Edmonds, so is David Hennessy, Alexander Molkiakos. It is awesome to have this, that we had so many uh, great actors and actresses on this show. It is awesome. They all did a great job. And so they start off by the staircase, and they sort of do a do-si-do where uh, Burke guides David over to the table in the foyer, and where that little table is that Barnabas's cane goes on and the coat. And you see Lewis Edmonds as Roger Collins go over to the staircase, and I love how they do this so subtly. And there's a call. You have this conversation, and it's going well till David says the ghost of Bill Malloy uh, told me, where Vicky was. I know I'm sort of jumping a bit. Burke is sort of, where's Vicky? Where's Vicky? And David goes, oh, please don't get angry with me, Burke. Please, I don't want to go to jail. And you can't go to jail for what you did, especially if Burke is saying that. And Roger goes, but you can be punished. And Burke says, now I told you to not say anything. Um, and so we cut to the tool shed, or sorry, make sure I'm not jumping here. Yeah, when he says he finally kind of breaks down that before I get to the tool shed, he finally breaks down and says, I say break down, I don't mean that he's crying. He says that the ghost of Bill Malloy told him to help Vicky. First, Burke doesn't believe that, but he says, I know where she is. She's at the old house. And even Roger's like, wait a second. Like, at the old house, the sheriff searched there. We all searched there. And Burke's saying, yeah. So Roger and Burke are actually agreeing here. That's scary. Um, but but David says she's behind the bookshelf. On the second shelf. There's a switch that it pops it open. She's behind there. That's I've been giving Matthew food and water, and Roger doesn't necessarily believe this story, but he is curious by it. So that is interesting. Um, you have you have that Roger and Burke. Roger says, okay, Burke is convincing Roger, if you don't do this, her death's on your hands. If you don't, believe your own son here. And I do agree, fully. From a story standpoint, you got to make a choice in Dark Shadows. Basically, you got to decide, do you believe or not? This isn't just ghost. This isn't just believing in the supernatural. This is believing in a human being. And when you make that choice to not to, it really kind of, demoralizes a young kid at times when you don't, especially when they're telling the truth. So Roger says, "Okay, I guess you're right. I'll go get two. I'll go get a shotgun, some shotguns." And so we cut back to the old house, and Vicky actually sees the. We see the portrait glow, the portrait of Josette glow, and we see her come out. Now you notice her face looks like Catherine Lee Scott's. That's not by accident. Now, this episode is kind of a big deal in some sense. Now, I've often said no one ever says to Maggie Evans, "You look like Josette." In this episode, now Vicky doesn't fully say it, but when she appears in front of Victoria Winters, you kind of see that it's Catherine Lee Scott's face. It's definitely Catherine Lee Scott's voice. And you hear Victoria Winters, "It can't be. You look like," and she stops because she doesn't say Maggie Evans. But if you notice in the credits of this episode, Catherine Lee Scott is credited for playing Maggie Evans. Here's the thing: Maggie Evans is not in this episode. I don't know why Tubi has it this way. I think because it's the original credits have it this way, if I'm not mistaken. And so you have Catherine Lee Scott playing the ghost of Josette Dupre Collins, or Josette Collins at this point. They have not given her, they haven't said Josette Dupre Collins. They just call her Josette Collins. But we will learn her maiden name eventually. And because again, she was not born a Collins, she married into it. So you do get that line, "You look like," it doesn't finish. And then Josette's telling her, "Don't cry. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." I can clearly hear this is Kathleen Lee Scott, and Josette's ghost vanishes. And when Matthew comes back, you see Matthew raise the hatchet. Now, I can't get the word hatchet over like Jeffrey Dean Morgan did in The Walking Dead, but I'm going to try. So he's holding the hatchet here, and he lifts the hatchet up, and he's getting ready to bring down. You hear Victoria Winters scream, and then you see Matthew. "I saw the ghost of Josette Collins," and he stops. He kind of pulls back a bit with the hatch, and he lowers it to say, "You saw Josette." Yes, the ghost like me. They told me I would be okay, not to cry, not to be afraid. They like me, Matthew. You know who they want to kill? They want to kill you. Is this as morbid as Vicky gets? It's pretty morbid, but you gotta understand this is a fight for survival, and she is telling them the truth. The ghosts are out for blood, and it is Matthews. Matthews not wrong that the ghosts are out for blood. He's just wrong who they're after. Are they necessarily after blood, or are they just after to kill Matthew? They're just out for revenge to kill Matthew. The ghosts are pretty vengeful in Dark Shadows. Again, this is not a fairy tale. So this is a gothic soap opera. And so Matthew begins hearing voices. "Matthew, Matthew, Matthew." And he goes out of the bookshelf. He closes it because, again, the help has kind of been delayed because David stalled on fully telling him a bit. He was nervous about going to jail or wherever thought he was going, which he's not going to go anywhere. And you see, I love this is the last appearance of Frank Schofield as the ghost of Bill Malloy, and he does a bang up job here. "What would you do with a drunken sailor? What would you do with a drunken sailor? What would you do with a drunken sailor lying on?" And because that's the song Bill Malloy loved to sing, and so Frank Schofield, Bill Malloy's ghost, I should say, does sing the song. And you see he's suddenly joined by four women. Well, those four women are the people who've been calling Matthew's name, and those four women are the widows of Widow's Hill. And they slowly surround Matthew as he's swinging his hatchet, and he yells. As we cut back to Vicky behind the bookshelf, we hear Matthew yell and scream, and then the screaming just suddenly stops as we hear Burke hollering for Vicky. And "Burke, Burke, I'm in here." And him and Roger, Burke and Roger, go to the bookshelf. They open it up, and they see Vicky inside. And Roger even says, David was right. I didn't believe him. David told you yes, and I didn't believe him," Roger says. And Roger actually hands Burke a knife to cut Vicky free. Burke asks if Vicky can walk. She can. Don't worry, we're armed. They're armed with shotguns. Elmer Fudd would be proud of them. Uh, hopefully. And you notice when you came in, you didn't see Matthew in the drawing room. Well, now he's sitting on a chair and he's kind of slouched over. And Burke and Roger notices him first. He says, "Look." He kind of points his gun at Matthew. Burke turns. He points his gun. He goes, "Okay, okay, Matthew, get up nice and slow." And Roger kind of notices he's not moving, so he approaches him. He goes, "Come on, Matthew, get up. Don't give us any trouble. Nobody wants to hurt you." And Roger slightly touches him, and Matthew just falls over, um, dead. And Roger says, "Oh my God, he's dead!" And Vicky screams, and then they leave. And then you get a close up of Sarah David's character's body. Matthew Morgan is dead, and that is the end of the episode. I keep hearing certain individuals who remain nameless say that Ron Sproat can't write. Um, get mental help, okay? Get mental help. Professional psychiatrist, because he absolutely can. I mean, my God, he writes some of the most banner episodes, and you know, people must be out of their damn fucking mind. Uh, so I'll say Ron. When I hear somebody say Ron Sproat can't write, I can't give him the time or day or credibility at all. Um, I just can't. Like, how could you even say that with any clear conscience is beyond me, because there are enough episodes to prove Ron Sproat could write. And this is just another banner episode he writes. Leela's directing, obviously. Well, amazing, amazing episode. Again, it's the last time you're going to see Frank Schofield. He's going to move on to bigger and better things. He's not going to play Bill Malloy anymore. This is also sort of proof that ghosts do move on, and this isn't the only time. Um, the ghost of Bill Malloy does move on. You could say, well, it's just because they can't get Frank Schofield back. True, but you got to give the story some context, and I do think that's what Ron is doing here. Hey, this ghost is leaving us. We have to move this ghost on. And this is showing you ghost, the supernatural, like I mentioned in the end of the last video, they make their own decisions. And it can be really scary for others, but it's also for their own interest. The undead or the supernatural have interest just as much as the living, especially in Dark Shadows. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to have another video up later tonight with Patrick and Alan. But you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe. God bless.